So welcome to Treasury Career Corner Live. Before I start, I'll introduce you to some amazing guests. I want to thank our amazing host, Herbert Smith Freehills. So where are you guys? Hands up, please. Amazing. Be nice to them. They'll be handing out free drinks afterwards, as will the lovely Darren and Patrick from FIS and State Street. Where are you guys? Say thank you to those at the end. Otherwise, they will take the drinks away from you. I also want to say a massive thank you to Craig and the team. So we've got Craig, Sophie, Ollie, Joe, Carly, Rebecca, as they've got all of you lot in a room on a Thursday night. I know it's just the free drink speaking. Anyway. This is the team. Them, so look out for them as well. If you have treasury recruitment needs or needs advice and everything else. Haven't also forgotten the lovely Katie standing at the back of the room. She was my stand-in if I got stuck with too many Guinnesses in Dublin. At the Dublin Treasury Conference yesterday. So, what I want to do... I'm Mike Richards. I run the Treasury Recruitment Company. Basil Radio, we'll talk about that in a minute. All we do is recruit you lovely people. From Treasury Assistant to Global Treasurer. I've done for 25 plus years. Everywhere through the US, right the way through the UK, Europe and Ireland. I also host a weekly podcast. A couple of amazing guests here. Anthony's been on it. Lovely Kemi. Emily will be on it soon. Yes. There you go. I've got it on tape. I thought when I started to host the Treasury Career Corner, it would be maybe 10 episodes talking to amazing treasurers about their treasury careers. Well, we're at 240 episodes, 100,000 downloads. People are interested in treasury. I was actually asked a question yesterday, and it came on a Slido there. How do you make treasury sexy, Mike? Whoever's done that, it said anonymous, I'm getting you afterwards. The thing was, I said, 100,000 downloads proves treasury is sexy. People are interested in it. They're interested in your treasury stories. That's what we're going to do. Bring it to life here. All of you must be subscribing on iTunes. I want to be seeing that as well. Today, we're going to go through these topics. Do an introduction to these guys and their careers thus far. Very successful. We'll then come to the power of qualifications and the differences it's made to their careers. We'll also talk about, and it's not on the screen necessarily, the new way of working. They say working from home. I call it more working remotely. And also what it's like now in a post-pandemic world of corporate treasury. Is it here forever? Is it here to stay? What's the balance? How do these guys manage it with their teams as well? So we explore that a little bit. We talk about some of the challenges they face as treasury professionals. And we live in interesting times, as you well know, global events and everything else. We'll then wrap up with some Q&A and make them nice questions. Otherwise, you'll not be getting free drinks. They'll be cancelled. What I'd also add is, if you don't ask questions at the end, when did you, as an audience, when did you get to come here, meet three amazing treasury professionals, wisdom about their treasury careers? The answer's never. So if you don't ask the Q&A and you don't get involved, more for you. So, we'll then finish with some final key takeaways before heading out to the bar. So, with that in front of our minds, we've got the lovely Kemi Balarin. Kemi is the European head of Treasury for GXO Logistics. Get all these exactly right. They did. Got it right on the slide. Get it right. Anthony Buchanan, Treasurer of Asahi Europe and International, and Emily Helps, Treasurer AMS. So I'm going to kick off with Kemi. Now, it's a little bit strange for myself. Kemi was one of my first ever placements 20 plus years ago.
You're giving it away there.
The fact is, Kemi, if you would, you'll explain for the audience How you first started in finance and then Treasury. Over to you.
Thank you very much. You gave that away, Mike. You should have mentioned the years, make it 5. But then, mine is a typical story of people that found their way into Treasury. I studied accountancy. I started out as an accountant, qualified as a chartered accountant, but then was lucky enough to have a year's internship at Anderson Consulting. I think I'm giving away the years as well to most people. So it was during my stint at Anderson Consulting that I came across Treasury, the world of Treasury. I was involved in a lot of Treasury analytical work, and that in a way inspired me to remain within Treasury. So I had a couple of stints with couple of investment banks in my native country, Nigeria, but then relocated to UK in 1997. And my first role was as a I think it was a contract role as a Treasury and insurance assistant, and here I am, today. My boss then said, well, Kemi, if you're interested in Treasury, you might as well take on the ACT examinations, and that was it. I sat the exams 2000, I passed the exams, and I've never looked back, from Treasury.
And then with your career path, talk us through some of the other roles and the decisions you've made from there. So we're going to go through this with each of the, panellists. So you then joined Charter.
Yes.
Back in the day.
Yes, I joined Charter. It was a stint, and that was the role that you got me. Went over to Mike Richards. Was that Robert Walters you were at then?
Don't talk about that.
I shouldn't talk about that. Okay, we'll cover that later. Cut that out. Okay, we'll do that. And I had a stint at Charter. For me, it wasn't really, I can't say that it was a planned journey, as I said, from accountancy to Treasury, but then one led to the other. I think for me, the light bulb moment was my boss, Heki Multiserve, that got me into the world of Treasury. And the ACT actually gave me the platform, to enhance the sort of the technical knowledge, as well as a robust opportunity to network with aspiring Treasury professionals, as well as people that, that are already established in the process. So from Charter, I got a role with Southern Pacific Mortgage Limited, which was then owned by Lehman Brothers, gone bust now since then. Then from Southern Pacific, moved on to Delta PLC. Again, that was another good cut-in-teeth role in the world of Treasury. From Delta, moved on to Travelport. Travelport was where I spent like a good 12 years, and it was a good development of my role. It was working 3 companies in one, really. Started out as private equity, went on to being listed on the stock exchange, then back into private equity. And that was the opportunity for me to actually get involved in a wide, varied aspect of Treasury. I did, grow within the role. But again, you're going to come to the aspect of challenges much later on. But then within Travelport was 12 years of just stabilizing, my knowledge within Treasury. Towards the tail end of it, I got interest in technology. Of course, there's a world of fintech out there helping us treasurers, to be better and be more efficient. So in terms of conscious decision, it wasn't really, it was pretty much going with the flow, but we'll come back to that later, because I did learn later on in life that, well, you need to have a goal plan, and you need to be able to manage your career structurally. But I must say that the few people that I've met along the lines have actually helped shape my growth within Treasury and, kept me here within the Treasury profession.
And then you made the move more recently to GXO.
Yes.
Can you explain to the audience who GXO and your role there?
Yep. So again, GXO was post-COVID. COVID was a perfect opportunity for me to take my foot off the pedal. It was an opportunity for me to be self-reflective, and I think many people said that. It was just that sort of quiet moment, and that's what I meant by the fact that my career within Travelport, I think I must have assigned my career development to somebody else unknowingly who didn't know that it was his job to make sure that Kemi was well developed. I thought it was someone else's role. But the pandemic gave me that opportunity to take a look, take a stock, of my profession. Where do I really want to go? What am I doing here? And that was the point where I was able to identify the gaps, even in my technical knowledge, my gaps in my sort of personality traits, the mindset change that I needed to implement just so that I could get to the next level. And in that short time, that lockdown during the pandemic, I was able to activate these positive changes that then immediately, gave me the positive results. So I had a short stint with GTT Communications. That was the point where I said, Travelport, I think I've done enough. I risked being deemed institutionalized, having spent 12 years in a company, people will start thinking, oh God, how lazy are you about your career? So that's the reason why I activated that change. And the moment I activated that change, the opportunities were just, at the door. So I got this short stint with GTT Communications to help set up the Treasury team. Similar process, they were also going through a spin-off, and they wanted to set up a new Treasury team for the new spin-off company. I thought, yeah, why not? I don't have that on my CV. I'd like to add this as a skill. And while I was working through with GTT, 6 weeks or so later, I got the call for GXO. Again, similar process. It was going through spin-off, and but it was on a larger scale compared to GTT, so it was a no-brainer for me. So GXO Logistics is contract logistics. I think through acquisition of Clipper, we're probably the largest in the UK, and second largest to DHL. So my role at GXO was to come in again, set up a Treasury team, do the lift and shift from the company that we're being spun off from, stabilize the Treasury team, and then think about the next step. So again, it was no mean feat. This time last year in July, it was just me, myself, and I trying to do all that needed to be done. And of course, we reached out to Treasury Recruitment only because I knew that ours was unique. We needed a particular set of people that wouldn't be precious about rolling up their sleeves and then helping us lift and shift and then elevate to the next level. So here we are, 1 year on. We've got a steady team here of Treasury professionals. The next step is, where do we go from here? How do we transform? How do we change processes? How do we become effective business partners? For our CFO.
I'm going to come back to yourself in a minute about working, the remote working,
Yep.
how you went through that in a
Yep.
minute. But
Yep.
I'm going to pass it across to Mr. Buchanan. Anthony, over to you, sir. Give us a run through.
Okay, so many years ago,
In a land of
I started work at a merchant bank back in the day when they existed. I was doing an economics degree, and during holidays I used to go out there and work in back middle office, supporting them. I told you to switch the damn thing off. It was sort of interbank FX trading. And I was still doing my degree, and then got chatting with the MD, and the banking world yet again was suffering, and basically said, I've got a choice to do an MA, stick it out with you, do accounting, or take off around the world. So his full recommendation was to piss off around the world and actually go enjoy yourself for a few years, a year or so, save up, travel. And so I did that, came back, and then the banking world was in an even worse situation. But there happened to be an American oil company based down the road from me who was looking for a finance role. So I applied for that, highlighted the banking economics degree, and they were interested to take me on to do cash management. Did that it was cash forecasting, some of the oil forecasting and so on. And then after a few years, and I'll come on to this, and sort of every 3 years I was trying to look for new opportunities, and I was doing accounting exams at the time. They talked about audit, and I wasn't so keen on audit. So there was an opportunity at Graham Met, back in the day when it was Graham Met, to work in their Treasury accounting team. And their team was big, so 25 plus years ago, having a large Treasury team was somewhat unheard of. But to get a choice into the accounting world, into Treasury, and I remember the head of the Treasury accounting team said, "You're not trying to get into the dealing room, are you?" I was like, no, I didn't even really know there was a dealing room. I did all this research on hotels to find out actually that we're now a drinks business, and then they merged with Guinness, and then there was an opportunity to move into the front office. I was like, okay, this is a bit more exciting. So I had to go back to my boss and go, you know what, I've changed my mind. Can I look for a role there? And with that move, I then decided I need to do ACT, bring it more in line for the front office knowledge and carry on. So I flipped out of ACCA, started doing the ACT exams, and then after about 8 years, actually, I was heading up the trading desk by that stage, and we were doing FX and interest rates and so on, and then cash, of course. So that gave me a great experience. I then decided, actually, it's now time to look for a new opportunity. They had a good Treasury consulting team, but then there was discussion around money, and there was a tech company who some of you might know about that I moved across to because they had quite an interesting sort of Treasury consulting role where you do internal consulting for a very large global group, and their EMEA head office was based quite close to me. So I then, after moving into London, had to commute out to London to this place. Spent a couple of years there and decided actually computers really aren't for me. So then there was a South African drinks business setting up close to home. So I went back into booze effectively and I've been there ever since, so in various guises. So SAB Miller were just setting up a UK office. I was first of 3 people to join that company. By the time it got taken over, there were 60 people in Treasury across the globe, front, back, middle office, segregation of duties and everything. But I did regional treasurer roles looking after the Americas. I then took over Europe. I got nicknamed A&E because there was always an issue going on with one of the regions. And for my final part of my career there was I went over to Switzerland to set up treasury and procurement. And that's where I got more involved with commodities and trying to, again, look for something new to do. I've spent a long time looking at FX, interest rates, M&A. So we went into that team, set up some working capital objectives, started commodity risk management, and it was going great until the number 1 beer business decided to buy us. And therefore, you're then looking around and thinking, well, do I want to work for them? If I don't work for them, actually living in Switzerland is quite expensive. So I moved back to the UK, and ABI had to sell off a couple of their parts of the European businesses. And one of them was Asahi Breweries. Asahi Breweries Europe, very Eastern European focused. I knew some of the team already and applied for that role as the treasurer. Ironically, was sitting with the CFO on my last day in Switzerland, and he said, well, how would you set up Treasury? I said, well, I think you need to do this, and you're a small team, it's a small business. And then by the time I hit the UK, I've got a phone call from HR saying, well, do you want to apply for it, send your CV in and go through the interview process? And lucky enough to get it, although it's starting from scratch. There was nothing there, similar to your stories, that there was no systems, people, policies. So we literally, over a couple of years, had to build that up. And over that time period, which is now almost 5 years, the company's grown. So it's Asahi, what was Europe, is now Europe and International. So it's the Asahi group outside of Japan and Australia, where we have 2 large businesses who they manage those countries. So it means we are a centralized team looking after FX, commodities, cash, looking after working capital with the procurement team. And because there's only 8 of us for a global footprint, we have to be very reliant on systems. And I'm not the greatest tech guy in the world, but you bring in strong people around you. So I think that's what's helped is I can do certain areas, but you also need to recognise where you're not so strong and therefore need to bring in the right skill set.
We're going to come back to that and also talk about education at the moment as well. We'll hand over to Emily, maybe give a run through and then talk more ACT as well.
Yep. So I've got quite an international background, half French, half English, studied in Germany and then did my MBA in Canada, and sort of like a lot of us, not very original, stumbled into Treasury. And it was kind of love at first sight. So I sort of committed to Treasury since I graduated, basically. So in my last 15 years of my career, worked myself through the ranks, so probably held every position you can think of, and starting off at analyst, manager, senior manager, deputy treasurer, and now head of Treasury. Worked across a few different industries, not-for-profit, biotech, infrastructure, and now recruitment. So I started off with my MBA, did my qualifications with the ACT, and then worked myself up through the ranks. Started with the Salvation Army in Canada. Wanted to make a difference, so start my career in not-for-profit, and I was attracted to the role really because of the change that was going on. There was a new treasurer, the Treasury department was new, and she basically wanted to change everything within Treasury, so I was leading Treasury projects, quite high level for an entry level position. Bank migration, so moving across 250 bank accounts to one central bank. a merchant acquirer changing up 150 merchants to new point of sale terminals, changing the whole credit card program, and putting all the checks and balances that you would expect in a new Treasury function. So I felt quite fortunate to have that as my first job. Then for personal reasons, I got deported from Canada. No, just kidding. I just wanted to move closer to my family and decided that London was probably a good place to continue my career. And so I joined a PLC called Genus in FTSE 250 biotech. What Genus does is probably not really PG for this audience, so I'll let you Google it after that. But very, very successful company. They had a new CEO at the time, so heavily involved in growth in Asia. So I had my first taste of sort of M&A, complex technical issues, kind of like hedge accounting, a big FX program, a lot of cash management, another bank implementation with notional cash pooling, cash concentration, and some funky commodity hedging as well going on. So I stayed with Genus around 3 to 4 years, and that's when I qualified with the ACT. And I felt what was really missing from my CV was sort of the DCM, the capital markets and credit rating agency, the bank relationship, more the sort of like the front officey bit. So that's when I joined Eversholt Rail, which is sort of an infrastructure company, part of a large infrastructure group based in Hong Kong. So went through an acquisition with them. They were initially PE-backed, then got acquired by the CK Group in Hong Kong, which was an interesting process, and then was involved in financing, so over £1 billion worth of financing over the bond market, private placement market, managed quite a heavy derivative program, got to manage the banks, so really rounded up my treasury knowledge. Stayed with Eversholt 7 years, had 2 kids in the process, and then I thought, it's time for me to sort of consolidate that knowledge, and COVID was quite reflective for me as well. I'm ready to really go on and get a new challenge and put my stamp on my own department. And then conveniently I got a call from Craig, who works for Mike, saying, listen, there's a position opening up at AMS. They're setting up, they've got a small treasury function, the company's growing, and they want, a first head of treasury. So off I went earlier this year in July. So a small team of 4, great team. One of them is present today. So, and the company's really great. So it's the recruitment process outsourcing. So we basically take large companies, so financial institutions, big farmers, big blue chip companies, recruitment process, and we outsource it and run it from scratch, from start to finish. We've acquired 2 smaller companies since I've joined, one in India and one in Canada, so working on integrating those companies. So that's been really, really great work and different to what I've been doing so far. And also in charge of the insurance program, which has been a step up for me too. And I mean, in terms of my career, I haven't really been chasing the big names, and I think that's probably what's helped me progress quite quickly, working for maybe smaller name companies and going for the breadth of experience and the breadth of projects. So being involved in a lot of different areas, which then enabled me to consolidate that knowledge and go apply it to other roles and work myself quite quickly up into the ladder.
In the room here, we've got quite a range of experience, if you like. So we've got people, some of the treasury professionals here are early stage in their careers. We've got a prize winner, MCT. I'll introduce you to him later. Again, just to embarrass them. We've got the president of the ACT. Got his way in the room, so that's it. Pro ACT. We're pro education. We talk about it a lot on the podcast. when I talk to people. I just wanted to ask you as a panel what difference you think it made, not only to yourselves, with your careers, and we'll go through that, but also, not just as an education to all the room, but more why, people should think about it. Now, we're not saying you have to do ACT. There's a variety of other things across Europe, but it's made a difference to both, all of your careers, and we'll come back to you. You came in about mentoring as well, but starting with yourself, why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be heavily biased towards the ACT. I'm a strong supporter of the ACT. I mean, actually, after my MBA back in Canada, I started studying for my CFA because that's sort of the big designation in North America. So I passed my level 1, and then I moved to the UK, and my boss at Genus told me, Emily, if you're doing your CFA, it'll probably be an investment banking career. If you want to progress in Treasury, in corporate Treasury, you need to do your ACT exams. So I dropped my CFA, and I focused on the ACT, and I have absolutely not regretted it. I mean, it's an amazing qualification, and it gives you a lot of practical experience as well, because once I qualified, I got involved in a lot of their initiatives. And when you're at the early stages of your career, that helps you with a practical experience. So they made me a head judge for their Ones to Watch awards. I helped audit some of their qualifications and shape their qualifications. I did some marketing material for their sort of uni and uni campus campaigns. I chaired their Futures Leaders in Treasury group for 3 years, and now I'm chairing their membership advisory panel. So it's not only the learning, which is great and which I think you should really focus on, especially at the early stages of your career, but it's also the practical experiences that you get as a result of that link with the ACT. You get that huge network. I mean, their events are just great. I try to attend the ACT conference, the annual conference every year. They've got a lot of free events as well. The forum is up in a couple of weeks' time, as well as the dinner. So a lot of networking opportunities and networking with your peers, because it's sometimes a bit tricky to be able to tap into that network, and the ACT really offers those opportunities. And you were saying, Mike, depending on the stage of your career, if you're new to Treasury, I would really push towards that. And it tells a lot about someone as well when you're recruiting, someone that's investing in themselves and investing in furthering their education. As a recruiting manager, hiring manager, you I always sort of lean towards that person that has that sort of, interest in focusing in themselves. If you're later on in your career and you feel, I've been fine in Treasury for 15, 20 years without needing the qualifications, well, maybe not, but the link to the ACT is still essential in my view, and you could access that link through other routes. Dino will probably be a better place than me to talk about it, but you've got e-affiliateship, you've got other routes to become associated to the ACT without going for the qualifications.
Anthony, you?
Definitely qualifications, ACT for me. No, so my early days at Diageo made me realise I actually quite enjoyed the front office rather than the accounting side of things. So the ACT was better suited for the role I wanted to actually develop as a career going forward. So that's where I moved from the ACC, used some of those exams as exemptions to then carry on doing the ACT. And so for early days, you can actually learn about stuff that you don't get to experience at that point. Early days in Diageo, I'm not going to get invited into some secretive M&A deal, but I can learn about some of the valuation techniques. So once there's an opportunity and then you can actually demonstrate you have some of these skills, then you get invited onto the inside of some of these deals. And then it definitely helped me sort of later life to understand other bits and pieces. I think also on the recruitment side, maybe a little less nowadays, but at least 4 or 5 years ago, everyone's got a degree. So that's the starting point. Then you need to look for what else have people got, what have they invested into their career to make you interested to come and help and develop them going forward. So if they're already doing ACT, especially for the front office, back middle office, you could argue actually maybe an accounting qualification with all the hedge accounting, the governance and compliance that you need to follow, that might be a better qualification to start with. But if you want to actually really focus on the front office, I think the ACT is where you need to be focused. It'll give you that experience, and then you take it into practice and develop your CV. And the other thing I love about the ACT is that all qualifications in general, it's very easy for people to put stuff on a CV, and it all sounds very good. And sometimes the language varies by corporate, so you're trying to figure out. And then I did one recently where we're looking for a cash manager. The guy said, "Oh, I trade FX." And so I've got HR saying, you need to talk to these people. He worked at the Bureau de Change. His CV was beautifully written, but when you start getting into it and start breaking it, he was Central London Bureau de Change, and that was his FX, spot trade. And when he talked about cash handling, he was like handling notes. And so when I was asking about qualifications, I haven't done that actually, but if someone's doing the ACT, they're not going to be looking to do that. They want to go corporate treasury, want to start with cash management and then broaden their CV and do that sort of 3-year cycle. And I think having these qualifications on CVs helps you. You can't hide behind a qualification because it's so easy to check. Have they got what they said they've got? So various projects and stuff, you can sort of hide behind it a little bit. Until you start testing them and wasting an hour of your life to go through an interview to find out actually they were on the periphery of a project which looked really impressive, and that's why you brought them in. And to find out actually they sat on the sidelines, they didn't really drive it or have inside knowledge onto it. But
yeah, I echo, all the points made by both Emily and Anthony there. And similar to what Emily said, I was fortunate enough to have a treasurer who told me right from day one that if you're really serious in this career, you need to go for your ACT exams. And that was the best advice, I must say, in this profession. From my perspective as well, coming in as a chartered accountant and then entering the sort of treasury profession, sitting the exams was opportunity to access a broad range of topics that you wouldn't ordinarily, be able to access, in a corporate. I mean, with corporates, you have all sorts of specializations in different aspects. With banks as well, you're probably just looking at your corporate finance and FX. But then with the ACT, I was able to access that sort of broad range of technical skills. And that would be my advice to anyone that is looking to, progress within the profession. Not only do you have that sort of technical knowledge, and I mentioned it at the start of this panel session, is even access to different levels of people, different stages in their career. I was able to take advantage of that as well. I mean, if I had issues, knotty issues within my role, I was able to access people outside, people that I could be vulnerable with, people whereby, I could ask questions and I wouldn't feel like, that's going to impact my performance appraisal, maybe down the line. So again, it's that sort of variability in the benefits that you get. Again, it's an agile organization. It's an organization that on a day-to-day basis, you have relevant topical issues, that are being debated. Solutions are out there. So if, again, you're starting and you're not quite sure as to what aspect of treasury do I really want to specialize in, again, that is a very good platform, to go for.
I touched on it before about this new post-pandemic world. If you like, I'm going to come to yourself about this, Anthony, first of all, to start with. Working from home, a number of you guys may have just literally come from your bedrooms, switched off your PC, right after the session, God, I've got to put a suit on. And I've seen a couple of people in slippers, which is a bit wild. But I was going to say, working from home, remote working, whatever you want to call it, how have you guys, and Kemi touched on, a period of reflection for both you and Emily during the pandemic, but if we look at now as we're returning to the world of work and how many days you're back in the office and things, Anthony, how are you handling it? Then we're going to do Emily and then back to Kemi.
Well, there was 2 areas for me. For a beer business, when you've got no pubs, you're starting to struggle a bit. So we had the challenges going on with work. We were also trying to support our suppliers through working capital and then sponsoring pubs and just keep them ticking over until hopefully everything opened up again. So there was, and it's what I'm going to mention later, is actually try and do stuff outside of Treasury. If you want to develop your career, develop your CV, you don't necessarily always focus on, I've done FX, I've done interest rates. And so I was working with teams trying to support stuff outside of Treasury. And then from the working environment, now, I mean, early days it was challenging. We recruited people who I'd never met face to face, and so we put them onto temporary contracts because it was like, they're great on TV, but how are we actually going to, when you meet them face to face, is this going to work? What we then found is actually, when everything opened up, we're 2 days of the week in together. Because to be honest, my boss sits over in Prague, so everything I've always done with him is either me flying around all over the place or remotely. So he didn't know if I was in the office or not. His rule was you had to be in the office pre-COVID, and that's what I used to joke to him. It's like, you have no idea. We didn't have Teams, we didn't have Zoom. You had Skype, wherever that is now, so which never worked. So it's like I could be anywhere. But I was having to travel quite a lot, which isn't really sustainable either. So, and think about the environment. So with the sort of advance of tech, you don't have to be sitting next to each other all the time. And further into your career, as long as you've already built your network up, you probably don't need to be there. I do feel for the younger generation, because how do they develop those opportunities, meeting senior management, getting their face in front of them, when you're not invited to those sort of meetings? You actually have to be into the office and bump into them, or grabbing a coffee and having a chat, and then get yourself recognised and so on. That, I think, still is a challenge. If you're working from home all the time, you just don't get to see the right people who go, oh yeah, there's this role here, I met this person, and they talked to really interesting ideas. So yeah, that's why I said we're in the office twice a week, and we can all get to sit down. And then if you want to go more frequently, you can. If it's better space, better tech in the office, not always true in our place, but it's easier to actually then to integrate and to network.
Emily, working.
Yeah, I'll echo most of Anthony's thoughts. I mean, our policy at AMS is that is fully flexible at the minute. So you come in a lot if you want to. You don't come in at all if you don't want to. We're a global company, as I say, like located in 40 different countries. So, and the fact that the tech works well, actually. It just works. For my team, some people like coming in a lot, other less. And I mean, it works, and it works with the work-life balance. It works with, people's personal preferences. And at the end of the day, from my perspective, so long as the work gets done, I'm fine. We take time to do things together as a team, so we get to know each other. Where it is tough is for people, just starting out, and I think it's good to have, the face-to-face interactions once in a while. But I think, the hybrid working for me is probably the only silver lining out that we got out of the pandemic, and I would never go back to being in the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week.
Before I passed to Kemi, it was just an observation, just a reflection really from some of the sessions I've been done. I did one recently with the NACT in the US, and I was talking to some of these very senior treasurers, and they're incredible people, running global treasury departments. And I talked to one in particular, it's brilliant, we're back in the office. I went, oh wow, how are the team enjoying it? Is it really good? He said, well, yeah, and we're coming back in the office 5 days a week. I was like, crumbs, wow. Okay, it was quite a stretch, and I sort of started to say, well, when you're seeing, you're back in the 5 days a week, are you seeing everyone? Oh, no, not really. I said, well, we're seeing all the banks, we're seeing all our, relationship. I'm out in the business. And actually, I then put this question to the panel, the people that were there, and I said, can I ask, are you seeing your team more or less now? And there was this, I'm actually seeing less of them. By previously they had this, Luc Fleming from Belgium, an amazing guy, and he said they used to have this virtual coffee break all the time where they all around the water cooler and everyone got to know each other and everything else. And actually he was reinstalling it in the physical world as well. He was getting people in and said, right, we have to sit down as a team and just talk about our lives, because it really helped them with their development. And Kemi, I know you and I have talked about this. Yeah. What's it been like for you?
I mean, it's the same for GXO runs a hybrid working culture, as you said, and it's pretty flexible. We don't have confirmed number of days we leave it to people to do as they wish. But I think the nature of the Treasury professionals I have working in my team is I think they really like having people around. So within our sort of GXO Treasury team, we're always in the office like 4 or 5 days. I've got a couple of them here. I think they just enjoy the human interaction. However, they know that, they can work from home however they wish to do that. From my perspective, echoing what Anthony and Emily has said, is I've had to look inwards and make myself a better manager operating within a remote working situation. The human interaction just needs to continue. And as you've rightly said, we just need to make sure we bring it out of ourselves. Make sure that we stay connected within our team, and we do that one-to-one regardless of where you are. So the one-to-one will happen in the physical. If you're in the office, we encourage it to happen in the physical when you're in the office. And if you're not able to make it to the office, then the one-to-one will be as a virtual be on a virtual medium. Again, we try to make sure that we stay connected as well, checking mental health, because I think that's the big issue with pandemic and working from home. People can easily, settle into themselves. It's the change in the mindset that I think we all need to be really conscious of, making sure that, all the voices are given the opportunity to be heard, because some people are quieter than the others, and the quiet ones will probably just become, faceless. Again, what I try to do as well is make sure that my direct reports are in touch with the leaders, one step up, 2 steps, above. They have interactions, even if it's virtual. Yes, my boss as well is in the US, but he also encourages that one-to-one. So my boss actually has, interactions with my direct reports. So it's just being conscious and making sure that anything social, we're encouraging it as well. We're thinking about Taco Tuesdays to get people to come into the office, because occupancy in my office is about 5%, mainly Treasury and FP&A. So what can we do? Gin and tonic Fridays, maybe. But again, it's just bringing the human aspect, into managing our teams.
I'm going to go to Q&A shortly. I'm going to go back to the panel and ask them some challenges before we do a wrap-up post-Q&A. So get your questions in, if you would. When I do the podcast each and every week, I talk to treasurers about their careers, and then we get to this stage, I say, well, look, now before we wrap up that show each week, I say, look, what are the key things keeping you awake, or, issues, if you like, you're facing? We've talked about the people issues, and things like that, remote working, and balancing that. As Treasury professionals, how are you coping and planning, or what are things affecting you, Emily, and then we'll come to Anthony and then Kemi again, you're thinking, we need to think about, we touched a bit on the people aspects. What other things do you think, these guys need to be thinking about as well?
On the technical aspects, probably the volatility of the markets. I mean, the rates markets and the FX markets are a bit all over the place and extremely volatile. So obviously, it's a difficult environment to navigate through, especially when you're setting budgets. So it's all about, having the right frameworks, future-proofing your business, having robust policies and procedures. But I'd say at the minute, yes, it's just the uncertainty and the volatility of the markets.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've got Eastern European FX, we've got commodities, including energy for brewing and distribution. You've got inflation. Yeah, inflation, wage inflation, which Treasury can't help as much, but a lot of those other areas people are focused on. So I have monthly calls with the CFO. We have a team that does a risk management committee. I'm now getting weekly up to sort of chit-chats about, okay, what's going on here? What should we do different? But the cost of hedging has gone through the roof because of interest rates and inflation. What can we do different? Now I've got the CEO every now and then going, all right, so what are we going to do? And it's like, well, I can't change the market, but we can do, thankfully, I mean, we've done, hedging has actually really shown to be the right thing to do when things go crazy. So 4 years worth of value hedging, and it's actually starting to pay dividends. So yeah, the crazy markets, which they're not going to go away anytime soon. I mean, on the flip side, it's an amazing time to be in Treasury, because all of a sudden you're front and centre with some very senior management, and it's interesting, exciting. This whole black swan scenario, once in 10 years, is utter rubbish nowadays. So from 2008, it's literally, if you go through it, it's every 2 to 4 years something blows up, either European credit crisis, Brexit, Then we had COVID, and now, unfortunately, a European war. All is creating volatility, which we need to sort out and manage as best we can. So, interesting but scary.
And I agree. Pre-COVID, I think in my opinion, I thought Treasury was tailing towards that sort of line of obscurity within the finance department. And then we had COVID. COVID was the opportunity for the treasurers to emerge and, pretty much, reimagine their role as strategic allies. And then with all the macroeconomic issues and, energy crisis, as you've said, is enabled, treasurers to continue to ride on the success. I mean, as well, you've touched on recession, you've touched on inflation. We think about the credit profile of all the customers and all the counterparties that we are facing. How well are they doing? What are the indicators that are out there? So it becomes a constant watch. It's a constant reading of materials out there. Who are our major counterparties? How is all this inflation, recession, energy crisis impacting them? What's the exposure that we have? Also talking about credit insurance. Thinking about credit insurance just to make sure that whatever the risk is, whatever the exposure is well managed from that perspective.
So as I said before, now Sophie and Holly are going to come around with some microphones, so put your hands up for some questions if you would, because you've got three incredible Treasury professionals here. So you're going to get a chance to actually ask them some questions, and then we're going to do some takeaways for you guys. What questions have we got from you lot? Come on, get those hands up a little bit. Oh, there we go. We got that. There you go. Quickly, ladies, with the, I'll shout it out, Mr. Norris. There you go.
I can shout it out.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, there you go. Oh, no, we got it. There you go.
Brilliant, thank you. That was really interesting, thank you. Very interesting careers as well. What would you say if you're willing to share, your biggest misstep in your career would be?
I would definitely start with that to leave that.
Missteps. So I touch on it as a wrap up. So early days at Diageo, you're expected wherever you are to know about everything. And I tried to do that. And so I bumped into our group treasurer with the CFO walking down Oxford Street and goes, "Where's cable?" And it's like, I'm doing cash management. And it just not having that answer. And I tried to make something up and it just went really badly pear-shaped. So it's being able to say, "Look, sorry, I don't know, but I'll drop you a note. I've just walked out of the office, or I've been out for 40 minutes, and you know that everything's going crazy." You need to have an underlying knowledge of is it going up or down at that moment. But yeah, not having the confidence to say, "Look, I don't know, but I'll come back to you," there was a few mistakes. And then not so much, but there are mistakes, but it's actually owning up to the mistake and then finding a solution for it. They happen. It's a human nature, unfortunately. Try and not make them too expensive, but make sure you get out in front and say, "Look, we've got a problem here, we're trying to sort it, and we're going to resolve it," or come with a solution. There might be an expensive decision, but we'll come back to you on it.
Emily, you've never made a mistake.
Never.
Told us that.
Yeah.
Never. I'm perfect. It might be a cultural thing, but I'm a bit direct in my communication style, and I think it may be working in America, in North America, and being French, you don't really mince your words. So I have had a tendency in my early years to be a bit too direct and to sort of maybe not be as empathetic as I could have been. So I've sort of learned that to sort of tailor my answers and my style, my communication style to my audience. And actually that was quite a valuable lesson, because it's all about relationships, and it's all about learning how to communicate with people and adapting to your style to their style. That way, business relationships are smoother and you can sort of work better together.
Well, I'm the opposite to Emily there. That's what I would say. I think for me, it's not being bold enough, to take certain things and, put across my ideas or my opinion about anything. And as a result, I must have missed out on a couple of growth opportunities. And in my sort of self-reflection, I realized that, I wasn't doing myself good service. I just needed to be bold and more confident in in what I know, and how to put my ideas across. I call them lessons learned, really, to be honest. And it's just ensuring that we stay connected to ourselves as well and just audit ourselves. What's the limitation? What's the gap? And just make sure that, we top up on it. So communication was one of the key, skills that I had to top up on in my self-reflective period.
Had a question here, I think. Yeah. Come on, guys. That's it. Jogging them. That's all right. Just run.
When you're recruiting people or when you're promoting people within your teams, is there a certain level at which you require either an ACT or a different type of qualification, or is that a nice to have? It's just preferable that you are putting a lot of weight on experience as well.
Can be first?
Yeah, I can make a start. I mean, it's, for me, if you've got aspiration in Treasury, studying ACT, a qualification, is a good one. Indicating that you are actually on the path of studying for ACT is also one that we will consider. For me, it's around, what is if we're going to take you on into a role, we're looking to develop you in the role, but you need to show commitment, to the profession. So I would strongly advise that anyone starting in Treasury should consider ACT. And when I'm recruiting, I do look for those. So it's either you're telling me that you're qualified or you are on the path to qualifying.
For example, if you're looking for your deputy, would you require a qualification, or would you be open to, whether would probably be able to do the job?
I will be open because it's a mix, isn't it? It's a healthy mix. You do come across some experienced Treasury professionals, that have done a good 10, 15 years in Treasury. So by that, they've accessed a broad range, of skills, they've accessed a broad range, and they've also been in that, they've sat in that seat of decision-making, strategic thinking. So it will be a healthy balance. It depends on how advanced and how senior they are. If you're a starter, then yes, we can then start, shaping that thought around it. But in terms of a more senior role, yes, I will weigh that up, to depending on the experience. And as you said, also maybe try to, guide that person, the candidate, towards another route. So having those letters. At the end of the day, the letters get you through the door. It's a discussion that, I'm 15 years experience. People will look at the letters, and it's quite, it's beneficial to have.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they're slightly different. So if you're recruiting, you're going to look for the letters. I mean, the years of experience, but like I said earlier, it's sometimes what's written on the CV is hard to decipher. So knowing someone's actually qualified or doing the qualifications definitely counts. And actually our head of talent, she works with the ACT quite closely. So if I'm looking at a CV, she'll come up to me and go, well, hang on, where's the ACT qualification? She doesn't know much about Treasury. She sits quite close to us and hears us chat, but if she's interested in qualifications, something that demonstrates that you've got a level of understanding. If you're internal, we've got a very strong ACT supporting for Treasury, and even people who are looking to get into Treasury would say, look, you can get time off, full financial support and so on to do those qualifications. So you could get promoted from without having it because you know the person a lot better. So we've had people come out of procurement into Treasury because they want to broaden their skill set. But I think once they're in Treasury, there will be that push to say, well, what about doing these exams? We only do certain things in Treasury. You can learn a lot more by doing this qualification. So
I'd echo all those thoughts. The only point I'd probably add on the deputy question is that I would probably be open to interviewing a person that doesn't have an ACT qualification. However, I would quiz them very hard as to why they don't at that level. And it would have to be quite a compelling answer for that candidate to be successful at that level.
Probably got time for one more question. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Well, there you go. Maybe double question. You can arm wrestle over the microphone.
Just wondered, in terms of technology, I assume it's changed a lot since you started your careers. Which area area of IT would you say has been most helpful to you in terms of transforming the Treasury? So payments or SWIFT or Treasury systems or reconciliations or commodity hedging?
There's no tech there.
Yeah, I can take that one. It was probably in my previous role. I had the pleasure of taking the lead on a TMS implementation. Just a good one to have on the CV. A bit of an excruciating exercise. However, the benefits were immense. I mean, especially around hedge accounting, not having to do all the, the regression and analysis from scratch, having all the journals being posted automatically in the ERP, treasury payments going through, bank and cash reconciliations. That was probably the biggest win from a tech perspective in my career.
Yeah, I agree with TMS. I mean, I was thinking about that. So, I mean, our TMS, we could take the forecast from the business, the system will throw out the variances against our policy, and then we'll put an argument to say whether we should hedge or not. And so having that visibility, and then that goes straight into a trading solution, except for commodities, because I haven't found one yet, and with the auto match with the banks, and then into SWIFT. So on the flip side of that, I think early days when we were setting up, it was having a single bank multi-currency cash pool solution. Just have the visibility of cash early days. TMS you can get set up in the future, but actually knowing where your cash is and the risk you have with banks outside of a direct visibility, I think was where we focused on first off.
Yeah, for my case, we went through a transformation in my previous role, and from then on we were able to actually implement bots for payments, which again brought in efficiency in our payments landscape. Now, in my current role, we have fragmented systems, and I think it's not unique to GXO. We also have multiple banking partners, and we know how expensive it is to consolidate your ERPs, how expensive it is to shut a bank account and open another bank account. So my interest is in APIs. What sort of middleware can we implement that will enable us actually fuse the various fragmented systems that we need to work for, and then give us real-time data. My passion is in artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, but then, what's the middleware that will enable me achieve the various efficiencies that's out there by fintechs?
To run to time, we're going to one more question, and then we'll give each of the panelists going to give you some amazing takeaways. I'll even do some as well. I'm sorry, but we can't have everything. What were your answers?
Hi, my name is David. So, kind of stems from the first question, but Emily and Kemi mentioned communication as one of the kind of lessons they learned. Do you think so? What would be like the most important skill that you use on a daily basis to do your job? Is that be communication and what tasks to do?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think communicating in a language that people understand you. Treasury's brilliant to have really techie language which only a bank and other Treasury people understand. And actually sitting with the businesses, FDs have no knowledge. There's an element of, go do your job, sort it out, I need to give me a number. And there's elements of, we can't sort it out how you want it. So you need to be able to explain it into their language. And actually yesterday we were doing a presentation to our EMEA business on, this is what Treasury is all about, and breaking it down into plain English. So when my old treasurers back at Diageo said, you can explain it to your grandmother, you can explain it to anyone. And it's having that level of communication to take all the interesting language out of it and just make it plain. So we were talking about FX as far as going on holiday to buy a chalet, and then mortgages, and to take it down to that level of understanding when we're talking interest rate risk or FX risk.
Kemi, what would you say?
It is. It's the same thing, just making sure that we are speaking in plain, simple terms and English, being able to break things down. Most importantly, I think, is around distilling what's happening out there in the current market to how it relates to people's day-to-day jobs. So we sit there in the middle. When I say we, Treasury sits in the middle and interact with, all sorts of business units. We're talking about the, FP&A team, procurement, people that manage our fleets, people that manage our energy within the group. How does what happens today, translate or impact their role? So it's been able to distill those technical terms, think think outside, the box, and then ensuring that, they understand what we have to manage in terms of risk for the business.
Yeah, tailoring your communication style to your audience is really key, like pitching it at the right level, if you're talking to the CFO or to an analyst, but going a step forward, and that sort of segues into the top tips. Relationships are really everything, in my view. You have to be strong technically, but you also have to make the time, I think, as a human, you like taking time for a 30-minute coffee with a colleague or with a key stakeholder can change everything in terms of how you work going forward and the value you can add to your day-to-day job. So really making the time for those conversations casually as well makes a whole lot of difference, and that sort of feeds into the communication piece.
Right, so we're going to come to the key takeaways, and also the panellists will be frequenting the bar in there, so you can get your one-to-one questions with them. So we're going to skip through these. So, the key topics, questions done. Right, Kemi.
All right.
So now we have covered these a little bit, so without repeating ourselves a bit, but yeah, what are yours?
The key one here is the mentor, sponsor, and coach. Going through my career, I didn't even think that there was anything like that. But of course, later on, the current day sort of professionals have it peddled, to them every day. Seek a mentor, seek a sponsor, seek a coach. Is knowing who is doing what in our lives. Project managing our career as well. And I think I mentioned it earlier on that, I gave that role to somebody who didn't know that was his role to project manage my career. But it's been intentional about our career. What is our goal? Having a vision board as to this is where I am today. This is where I intend to go. So in terms of takeaways is project managing your career, making sure that you have those goals clear. Mentor, sponsor, coach, look for somebody that will speak for you, when you're outside the room, just like you rightly said, Emily. It's about breaking that relationship, having people that we speak to generally. Continuous learning, I'm very big on that, any day, 30 minutes, LinkedIn learning. There's a lot to glean from LinkedIn in terms of even personal development. And I say, as you grow in Treasury, it's thinking outside Treasury. What else can we bring into the community? How can we give back into the community? We all have authentic stories to tell, and just never know who is listening, and that story can help somebody else along the line. And most importantly, have fun, be authentic, and be real.
And I'm just going to reflect back on the mentorship. One of our early episodes, actually, we're going to re-catch up, is Karen van den Driesche, amazing lady. And one of the things that jumped out, and she talked about having a mentor, and there were 3 or 4 major points. And one of the ones she said you can be mad. I was like, right, okay. She went, you have a mad idea. Could this work? Could this? And she said she would talk to her mentor and have a crazy idea that might, at the heart of it, have something really good in there, but it's a safe environment. So by having someone like that, you run the bouncy idea and go, what do you think about this? Oh, it's a bit mad, but actually, and that she's got so much value, and she did a lot of that. So over to Anthony's now yours. I've got them there if you want. There you go.
Qualifications, I think we've touched on it multiple times. It gets you through the door. In your early part of your career, the qualifications help, and then you start getting the diversity. One thing I promised, I said, if you're looking for a new job, use a recruiter who talks Treasury. Because early days, I've used guys who put me in front of roles which was not a Treasury role, and I didn't have the qualifications, and it was a waste of time. And I've had CVs sent in to me, and HR love this. They've got their set recruiters, and they send you all this stuff. And a classic one, I was looking for a manager, and it was a restaurant manager from the Pizza Express in Woking, the infamous Pizza Express from Prince. But anyway, it's like, why am I looking at this? It's wasting my time. So get people who speak the right language, diversity of experience in your CV. And we work with tax, we work with legal, we've got opportunities within Treasury. Try and get out of that sometimes. So I've been lucky enough to do projects with HR. If you're going to complain about stuff in HR, you might have to step up and try and change it. So I was always moaning about something, and then I got dragged in to do a project. I've done an office build project, so trying to get these different things onto your CV. Sustainability is a massive thing right now as well, so there's lots of opportunities there. Learn from strong leaders. I mean, there's a lot of political minefields within corporates, and I was definitely no different. So learning how people work, speaking with, trying to learn sort of the experience of how to interact with people, the languages they like, and what are their focus points, so you can then sort of target your discussion on the particular thing they're worried about. And as I touched on it, make a decision. No one knows the answer in financial markets. As long as you can support it, be strong enough to go out and say, I think we should do this. Too often you sit in this meeting, goes round and round in circles, and you walk out of it, it's going, that's just wasted 40 minutes of my life. So make that decision, but also remember when to step out and say, look, I'm not sure, I'll have to come back to you. From that early mistake, it's like, if you're not comfortable with your decision, knowing full well it's going to be wrong, it'll never move exactly how you think it is, but if you can't support it, turn around and say, look, I'm going to have to come back to you on that. I'll drop you a note and or we'll work with the team, because you always work in teams, so it's like, we'll come back to you.
Emily?
So the first one I've sort of touched on, have develop a solid network. A lot of the jobs aren't necessarily advertised, and you might be able to access them through your networks, and leverage the link with industry bodies such as the ACT. I would say approach sort of career decisions in the same way as you would approach a business decision. So learn to quantify risk, build models, and it'll just make taking risks a bit easier when it comes to moving roles or asking for a better package. Just having everything to some stage your decision. Learn, keep an open mind. So. For me, it's worked well to sort of consider smaller organizations, smaller teams that gives you sort of the breadth of experience. So don't go necessarily chasing those big names that will then mean that you're sort of siloed in a role and not allow you to progress as quickly as you would hope for. A practical tip, don't procrastinate. Sometimes a task might look very challenging. Make it, tackle it in manageable phases, make it more like bite-sized phases, and then it'll make it look less overwhelming and allow you to be successful in taking on a challenge. And finally, that's maybe personal to me, being a bit direct, but don't get too emotional about work. Just have fun. It's just business after all.
Good.
So I'm going to give you some final ones from me as well. When you give these amazing people a round of applause in a minute, which you will, and really put your hands together, but also think about doing it for yourselves. Because it's a Thursday evening, yes, there's the free drink, I joke about that, but you've actually invested an hour of your lives in improving yourselves in your Treasury careers. Yes, there's been lots of it about study and lots of education, but there's also all the other learnings you got from amazing 3 Treasury professionals. But you've also turned up, and it's about putting in that work. And the way that, again, I was talking to the audience yesterday in Dublin, and I was talking to them, and it's about, I also sometimes think of it standing the wrong way round on that travelator at the airport. You turn around and it's taking you backwards. The funny thing is, people are still walking past you. Other people are developing themselves, they're investing in themselves. And it's not all about competition with everybody else, but if you don't develop, if you just sit still in Treasury, you're going to go backwards, because you've got to keep going. Obviously, there's an amazing podcast you can listen to. People are listening. Elevator pitch. This is about developing your value. In a minute, you're going to go out there, someone's going to say, what do you do? I'm in Treasury and I do cash management. Really? Anyone do cash management in this room? Touch cash in your jobs? Yeah, means nothing. What you need to do is say, I do cash management for XYZ, or whoever it might be, and what I do differently in my job, and what I do is make a difference. Where do you add value? And then tell someone that. Just tell them that, oh, I do this, or I work for them, and blah, blah, blah. Short elevator pitch, that's what we're talking about. The time it takes to go down in an elevator, 3 or 4 floors, quickly master that. Just think it through now. In a moment, as someone says, oh, what do you do? I'm with such and such. I'm the Treasury dealer at XYZ. Yes, so what? Tell us what you do. How do you make a difference in your day job? You've implemented a GMS, you've saved lots of people times, and that's what you need to do. The final tip is actually from Chris Fulton, a great American guy. I steal it all the time. When you walk away from here, you have a nice networking session. And who was that great guy? Oh, got his business card. Oh, and what he does, he makes these really good notes. And he'll take you go to a conference or something, and it's a great tip, and I do it now as well. You take their business card if someone hands it to you, or just literally jot it down and say, oh, yeah, I helped. They talked about their son, daughter going to university. I went there. Oh, just sending a couple of recommendations. He does it all the time. Now, the fact is, he's made 2 career moves that he's been approached for completely out of the blue. He never actually was looking for a role. Twice, roles have come looking for him. So that's one of the key things. So as I say, want to chat further, so you can put your hands together for these amazing 3 people. Thank you to Kemi, thank you to Anthony, thank you to Emily, thank you to Darren. Can't believe I'm saying that, Darren. Killing me now. Andy Winders and the guys from FIS as well. They're sponsoring the drinks. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.